Okay, you guys, let's do this. It's going to be so professional. Like, so professional. Here we go. Welcome to the Live Support Podcast with your hosts, Michele, VanDusen, and June Colson. A couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, it's so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me on Live Support, with Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball, with June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians on Live Support, with Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Live Support.
The Live Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause.
Welcome to the Live Support Podcast. I'm your host, June Colson, here with my best friend, Trisha's sister, Michele, with one L, VanDusen. Do not adjust your dials, ladies and gentlemen. I am June Colson, not a 60-year smoker. This is just what Kentucky spring and allergies sounds like. Isn't it sexy, Michele? Some people say that. Sexy. How is phlegm sexy? Explain that to me.
How is phlegm sexy? That's a great question. I don't think it actually is. What an interesting topic to start off. Yeah. You do sound like you've been smoking for years.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think it's just the lower register. I think for some reason or another, people are like, oh, what is that?
Yes.
What is that? And I gotta say, versus, a lower register in a woman versus that high shrill voice.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause the high shrill will get you every time, like, oh, stop.
Yeah.
Could you lower it? So and I only grew up with boys, right? So I just had boys in this house. They were loud, but they were loud. I could not ever imagine having a girl and listening to the screaming and the yelling.
Oh,
I wouldn't have
no.
been able to do that.
It is the smoky thing, though. It's the smoky voice. It's smoky eye is sexy. Like I had to wear clothes purchased with Marlboro miles because my dad smoked like 12 packs a day and we couldn't afford clothes. And so we cashed in like the Marlboro miles for jackets and blankets and you should have seen my prom dress, Michele. I was smoking hot in that prom dress. Just bright red Marlboro mile dress. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Smoking hot.
This is what it sounds like. Oh, and speaking of my dad, okay, before we get started, we're talking about inappropriate subjects. And our guest today is going to be like, he may bounce out. He may just disappear. Because you already quizzed him before we even got started. You were like, how do I know you? When did we meet? Where were we at? What was the day? What were you wearing? I
needed the hour, the time, the location. Come on, Dan.
Well, listen. Okay, so I'm trying to take, some, I'm not sick. I feel fine. I just sound awful. And my dad just had surgery. My mom
hot dog.
My daddy hot dog just had surgery. And my mom is in a nursing home and rehab right now. And it's really just like constantly caring for my aging parents. And yesterday my dad calls me and he says, I went back for my follow-up after the surgery. Everything was good. Man, you should see these pills they gave me yesterday, though. They're huge. They're like, seriously, I didn't know if they were a suppository or a pill. Actually, I still don't know. I should probably not be taking them orally. I was like, Dad, stop. Dad. So I don't know what's happening with hot dog, but I think I'm going to have to go over and do another medicine cabinet raid and make sure that he's not taking pet medicine or, doing things he shouldn't be. So
is he back at home?
He is, yeah. He's back at home. Yeah. Mom's in the nursing home. Dad's back at home.
He's at the house. Okay. I was like, you should just ask the nurse, but there is no nurse to ask.
No.
Yeah, you're going to want to check that cabinet for him. That'd be good.
I think so.
And I be taking these
should I be taking this orally? And the thing is, I'm not the person with attention deficit. I'm not the person to do your medications. My son just had his wisdom teeth taken out. And I gave him a pain pill And then about 4 hours later, when he was in excruciating pain, I realized, I gave him the antibiotic, not the pain pill. Don't tell him.
Oh, I won't tell him.
No,
I
you
will
know what
not
I
tell him.
said? You know what I said? Because my boys are so competitive. I was like, you need to suck it up, buddy. Your brother was so much tougher when he got his wisdom teeth taken out. Well, probably because I gave his brother pain medicine and not an antibiotic. So, oh my
Sounds about right.
geez.
Sounds about right.
Mm-mm,
Oh, that's
mm-mm.
so fun. So fun.
That's where we
sorry.
are, Michele.
Yeah,
That's
so
where.
fast, so orally.
Hey, it's
Oh,
never
okay.
ending with my parents. It's never ending. Well,
Yep.
listen, okay, I'm super
Yep.
excited because I get to meet someone new. And that's what's really cool about comedy is that, I mean, it's a small world. It really is. It's like once you meet somebody, it's like it's kind of like at Kroger, you know what I mean? Where you see that girl that you like graduated high school with and you haven't seen her in
Mhm.
20 years. And you're like, hey, how you doing? And you have that big moment. And then you go away. And then now you see her by the chicken. And then you see her again and after a while, it's like, okay,
Stop
enough already.
following me. Yeah.
It's following.
Get
But
out
it's
of here,
like
girl.
it's like, it really is a small world, and once you meet somebody in comedy, I feel like your paths continually cross later on, or it's been my
Mhm.
experience, and so here we are, I'm gonna meet someone new, and you get to
Yep.
introduce me to a friend of yours. So, Michele, tell us who is on the show today.
All right. So our guest today has a vision to bring joy to the world. Not the Christmas joy to the world, but
Mm.
just humor, fun, lighthearted laughter, and everything else like related to joy. He's an actor, a comedian. He does audiobook narration. He does musical comedy. He just does music. He does corporate events, community
Wow.
events, church events, and well, any other event basically that starts with the letter C. He's appeared on The Last Comic Standing, Celebrity Name Game, and can be seen like in several TV commercial. And he was also in the heavyweights of clean comedy. What?
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So let's welcome to Laugh Support Podcast, the Dan McGowan.
The Dan McGowan. Wow.
Yep.
Hi,
Yep.
ladies. So great to be here.
Hey,
Hey.
Dan. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Laugh Support.
Thank you. I love that name. What a great name. Laugh Support. That's so cool.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, here's the difference between Michele and I. When you said joy to the world, Michele went biblical and joy and Jesus, and I was thinking joy to the world.
Yeah.
Oh, the boys and girls. Now that's not. I don't think that's
Yeah,
a hymn.
with the little bullfrog singing. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
Jeremiah
Yeah.
was a bullfrog, which is
There
what I
you go.
sound like right now. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we're going there.
He's a good friend.
Yeah,
wait, no,
yeah.
that's
I love, Michele, you showing that heavyweights. Now that's a DVD. And for people
Yes.
watching who don't know what those are, those are things that movies used to be on, DVDs. Yeah. And now you don't even do those anymore, right? Yeah. Look at that. See? It's like a CD with pictures.
You didn't sign this, so I'm going to need this signed.
Oh, okay. Well, you can just sign it and say it was me.
So who
Okay,
was
that
on
works.
that with you, Dan? I see I can't.
That was 4 of us. It was great. It was Brent Reed. I don't know if you guys have interviewed him,
Yes.
but yeah, there you go. Brent Reed, Stephen B., and Dennis Tooley, and then myself.
So far we've interviewed 2 of the 4 heavyweights, so we got to get the other 2 on. I think we have one of them in the future coming up soon, very soon.
Very cool.
But yeah. So Dan, so we our show Laugh Support. That's basically what we talk about on here. We Michele and I became friends by her being my laugh support as I began doing comedy a few years ago. And
she used to call me a stalker, but whatever.
Yeah. She's so
Well,
tiny.
it's when you were hiding out in front of her house with the binoculars, watching her act. Trying to help her improve on that.
Yeah,
that would bring about that name Stalker.
Yeah, she needed a lot of help, so no.
This is true.
Well, it's a good thing you were there.
And she's so tiny, she can sneak right up on you, like you don't even know she's there. It's frightening.
I know. She really is the fly on the wall. It really, actually, that's exactly who she is.
Yeah,
I've been swatted at a lot of times. Yep.
There you go.
Yep, I've only got her once though. I've only caught her one time of all those swats. But yeah, so she's been my laugh support since I began doing comedy. And so that's why we did this podcast. We're like, well, I'm kind of curious who who are other comedians who have been their laugh support as they started their journey or traveled through their journey. So we wanted to have you on today and just kind of chat about that. So when you think about your journey in comedy, who are some people that come to mind that have been supportive for you in this?
I guess there's maybe two levels of that. Like one track are just people that I admired as comics as I was growing up. So I was always a big fan of like old school kind of comedy. So, you know, Bob Newhart, Jonathan Winters, you know, people of that ilk that I really liked. And then that kind of grew into Jerry Seinfeld, and then Steve Martin was a huge influence for me in terms of being kind of zany and goofy. So, but I think the biggest influence for me was a guy who's a clean comic named Brian Regan. And your listeners who don't know who he is should look him up. But he really kind of inspired me to sort of jump into this crazy world of comedy and you know, see what it was all about and see what I could bring.
Nice. Yeah, all of those names. Yeah, all of those names definitely like just such unique people in their own style of what they did. Bob Newhart, oh my gosh, you know, there's things now that like my son who's only 18 has watched some, you know, clips of Bob Newhart that I hear him like saying quotes and I'm like, how do you even know who he is? But so much of what he did was just timeless and classic. And one of my son's favorite shows is The Jerk. And that's how I decide if you can be my friend when I'm like leaving and I'm like, I'm leaving. And then all I need is this pair of scissors and this coffee cup, And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you don't get to be my friend anymore. You just don't get to be my friend anymore.
Well, I think there was something about comedy back in the day that, you know, a lot of those guys had nightclub acts that were not clean. You know, they would save their you know, other stuff for like the clubs and all that. But we saw them on television or movie, you know, we saw them in venues where it had to be a little tamer. And I love that. I love that they crafted things in such a way that people still found it funny, or they had writers that did it for them, you know. But you know, they were funny and you could laugh at it because it was approachable and it was observational and you could relate to it. And it in my opinion, it wasn't laced with hate or, you know, trying to bring people down or, you know, politics and all that. I mean, they would touch on that stuff, but it was pretty clean.
Yeah. And definitely in a way that is, I think the way they touch on politics and things like that is it would sound like they were hitting towards the left and then they'd punch towards the right and then they'd ride right down the middle and everybody was like, oh, I got him. Oh, got me. Oh, okay, here we go. And they moved on.
Of course, that was a time in history where you actually could have discussions with people who had different opinions than you and you could still get along. So I remember those days. I remember what that was like.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Now,
crazy.
So did you have, when you first started doing comedy, did you have people that you wrote with or a group around you or mentors, someone that you
you know,
were able to bounce things off of?
Yeah. When I first started doing comedy, it was, I was maybe a couple of years out of high school and I had a buddy that he and I were joined at the hip. He's now passed away, I don't know, 5 years ago, but so if we could just take a moment. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so
sorry.
Yeah, but he and I did goofy stuff all the time. And we started going to the Comedy Store and the Improv in Hollywood. And we would do like open mic nights and all that. And it was great. We had a great time as a duo. So he and I wrote a lot of stuff together and just were zany and wacky and all that. And then after about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, Mitzi Shore, who owned the Comedy Store, asked us to come aboard as full-time comics, which was great. Except what I didn't know is that when you're asked to come aboard, you basically show up at 1 a.m. and you're telling jokes for 2 or 3 other comics who are there to judge if you're funny or not. So you're not really up in front of a room. And I didn't like that. I just thought, you know, at the time in my life, I just didn't want to do that, you know. So I bailed out and forgot about comedy. And it wasn't until years later that I got back into it alone. And when I got back into it, I was in the clubs. and comedy clubs, and I was always working clean. And I remember at a club in Denver, which is where I was living at the time, a club called Comedy Works, great club. A guy named Wendy runs it now, but a guy named Dave was kind of the runner of the room, and he was really great at giving, advice on us newbies on what to do. He said that I was big on jazz hands and not to do that anymore. So for a while I had to put my hands in my pockets because I would actually, hey, how's everyone doing? And it was, got old really quickly. But yeah, Dave was great. He also made a comment that I've always tried to stick with. I'm not sure if I'm doing it today or not. I think I am, but he always said, if you're lighter skinned, then you should wear darker clothes so that your face shows up. Mm. And if you're darker skinned, then wear lighter clothes. So I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle with this purple shirt and black vest, but yeah, anyway, so he was great for all of us newbies there in Denver, and really a great guy to help us, in the journey.
Mm. Michele, I see
cool.
You got the pink on. I have the light skin, light hair, dark clothes. I feel like we're on it. We're doing it.
And we didn't even get the memo.
We didn't. But isn't that interesting how someone will give you a piece of advice? It seems to work. And you just carry it out. That becomes the thing that you go, it works for me. And I'm going to do that. Michele, have you had any advice like that you heard somebody say early on, or did you have the jazz hands? I could see Michele with jazz, but I think the problem that comes in with Michele's comedy is when she tries to mime it and people don't know what she's doing.
Yeah, I did find out that when you're doing an improv skit, they can't stand if you become the mime. They're like, someone get the mime off the stage, like get that off quick, because they'd rather have talking people. How old is that?
I have found that talking is really helpful in comedy. So they can actually hear your jokes.
Right? We can't all be Buster Keaton. So
right, yeah.
And we can only fall so many times.
Nice.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I've never had anybody tell me what to wear, obviously, and I probably should have someone help me with that. Because most of the time I just blend in with my background. I used to have just a black curtain, and then I was wearing a black turtleneck, and it was just a floating head here doing.
That's good.
Laugh support. Yeah. So.
Well, it's funny when I first started again. Man, I was 40, I think, when I first started again, and my go-to was like loud Hawaiian shirts. I don't know why. Maybe a Robin Williams thing. I'm not sure, but and it was fine. It was fine for whatever 5-6 months. But then when Dave talked about this wardrobe thing, I basically went Johnny Cash and just wore only black. Or I wore like these golf shirts, that I think I'm wearing one of those on that heavyweights thing, right?
It's the bowling.
It's a black shirt.
You're wearing
with red,
bowling shirts. Yeah.
A bowling shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I say? Golf. I meant bowling.
Show with you. Yeah. I remember doing a show with you, and it was a bowling shirt was what you were
right.
doing. And all I thought was, man, I wish I could wear one of those. Like, that was my thought.
Wow.
It'd be so easy, but I don't really see any women comics wearing bowling shirts.
You could be the one, Michele. You could be the one. Dan, who really likes Johnny Cash? June. June.
Really?
June likes Johnny Cash.
Yeah, because
Johnny
of June Carter Cass. Is that why?
That's right. But you do look very professional, and you look very put together.
Well, this is kind of my new. After the pandemic, when nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
And I started getting back into this now because we're performing. This is kind of my new go-to. It's not always this purple shirt, but I'm doing this vest and hat thing. I do the hat thing mainly because it covers up that, so that's why this covers a multitude of sins,
Somebody needs some powder.
Well, I know, because I've decided that my head is kind of like Shawshank Prison, and my hair is like Andy Dufresne, trying to escape. We're free. Let's go. Come on. So I wear this and I kind of think.
Some people will watch this podcast, but most people will listen to it. So I was going to say what Dan is referring to is when he removes his cap, there's long flowing locks of golden blonde hair that just fell to his
Thank
shoulders.
You. Yeah. And listen, do not adjust your sets. That's always how I look. That's
yeah,
I used to look like that.
For our listeners, Dan is wearing a golf cap with the Irish style, with a black vest, with wearing I don't know, some purpley shirt from Target.
Where was it from?
He's
I'm not sure where this
fancier.
was from. It might have been Target. It was
He's
probably a thrift
fancier than
store.
that. It's got to be
Yeah.
Target, I think. So Dan,
Target.
so we saw that, the heavyweights of comedy, obviously you have collaborated with other people, which would be, kind of laugh support for you. But we also kind of like to ask, there's a lot of people in their journeys in comedy have moments where they feel very just kind of out there and alone. Have you ever had any moments in comedy where you felt like this is just me? I'm doing this by myself?
Well, when you're in the club environment and you're surrounded in the green room by 10 other comics who are going to get their 3 minutes, so you're all talking and sharing and laughing and all that. But I began to feel very quickly, I realized that I didn't have 20 years to build up an act in the clubs, So I started putting myself out there for corporate comedy events, which meant I had to do a lot of writing and cruise ships, and that, I think, in terms of feeling alone, when you're doing a corporate gig in the middle of Kansas and it's you and your mic and this group of people you've never met, and there's nobody really there to, put my arm around and be shoulder to shoulder and support each other, you're alone. You're there. And if it dies, it dies. And if you do well, you do well, So, so I've had plenty of opportunities where I have felt kind of alone sitting over at a table, and then suddenly I'm announced and I go up and do my thing and everybody thinks we're all friends. And then I leave and say goodbye to people as they're leaving. And then I'm back in my car, going somewhere else. So that can be a little bit lonely, or not lonely, but you're isolated.
Mm.
Yeah, have you ever felt have you ever changed your set from when you were doing clubs to a corporate event? Like, how much material did you have to change? Did you have to change anything, or did you just create all new stuff?
I'll tell you what I did. I can tell you exactly what I did. I had this incredible when I first started again in my 40s, I just thought I was so funny. I could just stand at the mic and tell my jokes, and that was it, and people would laugh, and sometimes they wouldn't, but most of the time it did. And I ended up getting this great gig to open for the Pointer Sisters, the ones who were still alive. And so I did this gig in Arizona with them at this huge ballroom that had a giant dance floor between the stage and the first row of audience. And I got up on stage, I did my act, and I stood there, and there was an open bar in the back, and it was pretty miserable. I mean, some people that were able to listen heard me, and some of them laughed, but for the most part, it was a noisy guy up on the stage way down there. And it wasn't that great of a gig. It was the highest paid gig I had done thus far. So I felt kind of embarrassed when they gave me the check. I was like, oh, thank you. But the very next week I had a corporate gig that was for an agricultural company. I forget where, Nebraska or something. And I decided at that gig to never stop. I just moved the whole time. So it completely changed how I did my act. That Pointer Sisters gig forced me to move around. And so I move around now almost all the time when I perform. Depends on the room. But so that totally changed me. And the other thing that changed me, you can probably tell just as I talk, I tend to talk pretty fast. And so I did a gig in Leadville, Colorado, which is called the 2 Mile High City because it's at 10,000 feet. And when I did that gig, I could not breathe. I mean, I could breathe, but it was very difficult. I had to slow my act down incredibly. And I probably filled that hour with, less material than I would normally do because I had to stop and breathe. So those two things kind of helped change the way I do comedy. I've had to realize that for me, it's not the first time I'm hearing the joke. So I know exactly what I'm going to say. But for the audience, they've never heard them. And so I have to say it in a way that they will hear it so that they can comprehend the funny part and then laugh,
Oh, I love that. It's like, knock, knock.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
I don't think I could do anything up in Colorado. Like that would just, I'd be out of breath just getting there. No way.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting though, that a lot of times in comedy, we learn from each other, we watch other people. You were obviously paying attention to the greatest of the great when you first started doing it, you know, the list of Bob Newhart and all of that we were talking about. But then a lot of times our own style or what we learn is by mistakes or just a random moment that you're like, oh wait, that, you know, that works. That definitely worked for me.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is like, to me at least, it is an ongoing river of mistake after mistake after mistake. For me, the greatest times I've had were when I was, let's say, in a club as the MC or the host for the weekend, the opener or whatever. And, you know, the first show Thursday night is, you know, you get through it. But by Sunday night, all the pistons are going, and it just works so much better because you're constantly performing for like 3 or 4 nights in a row. And so you learn what works, what doesn't work, and all that. The other part of it too, wait, excuse me if you're watching while I take a hanky here. Great, okay. You'll edit that out, I know.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, thank you, that's good.
Yeah, so, post.
Thank you, that's good. But it was, now see, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something really profound. Oh.
Clubs.
Yeah. Another piece of advice I got was, because I've done a lot of acting, commercials and so forth, this guy Dave said, you know, use those to your credit, you know, to your advantage. Use the acting ability. So, like, there are routines that I do where, you know, and I think a lot of comics do this. You perfect your piece to a point where it looks like it's coming off the cuff, but it's not. You've actually rehearsed that to look like it's coming off the cuff. And my favorite example of that, I do a routine, a little bit that I usually close with on the song from the 60s, 70s, A Horse with No Name. And every bit of that bit, every moment of it is all planned out. But people watching it think, oh, that's so clever how he came up, you know. But no, I've been doing that for, you know, whatever, 10 years. So anyway, yeah.
I remember that bit.
Yeah. And you're still laughing.
The bit, you know, the horse bit. Okay.
Oh, the
mind.
bit. I see.
I get it. Sorry.
You're so witty. You're so witty. But
I
so
just
yeah,
snapped
so
with that one.
So you took your ability in comedy, and that laugh support became supportive of other avenues. So you said you've done acting, you've done commercials, radio as well. So did one lead you to the other, vice versa? And do they? It sounds like they would actually.
I think a lot of it is like who you meet and connect with, because you know, I think it's hard to continually try to promote yourself and say to people, I'm funny, you should have me come to your event, you know. I think it's better when somebody says, hey, we just had this guy at our thing and he was great, people loved him, you know, you should have him too. And then you get the phone call, you know. Which is funny I did this, because we don't do this, like, this isn't how phones are. Phones are this, right?
Yes.
You don't say like you say, I made a call. What is that? I don't even know what that is, but this is how I made a call, you know. Anyway, that was a side note. But yeah. I think I'm done. Did I answer your question? I think I did.
Yeah, I think I have a question. As an actor and as a comedian, do you have an agent for both, or is it for two different worlds?
So I've recently moved. I used to live in Southern California. Now I live up in Redding, California, which is above Sacramento. It's way up there. And it's nowhere near any kind of entertainment hub, you know. So yes, I do have an agent for acting. And I actually got another one that's closer to where I live now. And so far I've been getting a lot of voice work with them, nothing really on camera yet, which is fine. You know, in some ways I've been there, done that. And, you know, I'm thrilled I've been able to do that, but it's not like I'm looking for that to be the thing. And then I don't really have an agent for for comedy, but I'm on different sites like the Bash, which used to be Gig Masters and Gig Salad. And every so often I'll get a thing. Oh, I'm on another one. I just filled out a thing today, entertainers worldwide or something. I don't know. But, you try to get the gigs where you can. So what I'm doing up here in Reading is I'm going around to different corporations, and, I'm just trying to get my name out there again, because they don't know me. I'm in a new world up here. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a weird, like EKG, how this works, but that's okay. If it's your calling and you're called to do it, I believe God will open up the right avenues,
Right.
Like this, being able to be on your podcast here. This is like, I was down here, now I'm here, so it's I've notched up.
Yep. And we are worldwide. So
there you go.
Shout out to our listeners in India and South Africa and Pakistan and
I don't know what they're saying.
Canada.
What are those people saying? They're talking and I don't know what the language is. So we have to do this podcast in tongues is what we have to do. That would be a good way to go.
Maybe. Yeah, it does. It ever does blow my mind though that there are people in India and Australia and Pakistan and those places that are listening to us, Michele VanDusen. That's insane. And now our new Dan, right? I have, I love that. I love that you share, if it's your calling, that, it'll work itself out. And I think that's the same way with these relationships that you formed, and there's no coincidence in the people that you've run into that has pointed you into a direction for radio or voiceover or things like that. And then when you know where that comes from, you don't have to really stress about tomorrow, do you, Dan?
Well, you don't have to stress about tomorrow, although, as the three of us know, and our countless pals know, that when this is all you do, you better get those gigs, because every month the mortgage company wants me to pay them, Yeah,
it's crazy.
And so when that money doesn't come in, that gets a little stressful for me personally. And I have found that that's where the voiceover work or other thing. Mm-hmm. I still find myself looking at Indeed thinking maybe there's something I can do when I'm not telling jokes, just to see what's out there, because it does get a little stressful. But, and I hate that we live in a world where you need money. I just, whatever, I hate that. But we do. And so you got to figure that out, and we have to come up with ways that work for us to keep the money coming in. Thankfully I have a wife who has an amazing job, but even then, an extra $30,000 or $40,000 a month would be helpful,
Yes, absolutely. That wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. That wouldn't hurt my feelings one bit. But no, diversifying and being able to take the skill set that you have and not put yourself in a box and limit yourself to the things that you can do, I think is a great idea. Now, Michele, go ahead.
I think during the pandemic it was tough because hardly. I don't think anybody was able to work. But I actually had a lot of fun during the pandemic because I learned a new skill, and so this is how we were all walking around during the pandemic, right? We had to have these masks on.
Right.
And I guess in some places we still do, but I had a lifelong dream when I was growing up to add something to my comedy. And so I actually did that. And I want to introduce you to Dimples. This is Dimples. He's my little friend here. And so I learned how to do ventriloquism during the pandemic. Hi, Dimples. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Do you have a knock-knock joke for me? Yeah, I do. Knock-knock. Who's there? Dummy. Dummy who? Dummy you for wearing that stupid mask. Okay, that's enough, Dimples.
That's so crazy. Michele, did you see his lips moving for our listeners? He just brought up a what do you call it? It's not a puppet. What's it called?
It's a dummy.
It is a dummy. Okay.
Dummy. Yeah.
So Dan brought up a dummy.
Excuse me. His name is Dimples.
He's Dimples.
Dimples, the ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah.
Well, the
right.
The dummy's not a ventriloquist. Michele, that's so rude, Dan. I'm sorry that she said that. It's not the dummy ventriloquist. It's the ventriloquist with the dummy.
There you go. Yeah.
Words matter, and the order of the words matter. So for our listeners, Dan just did an amazing ventriloquist act. We did not see his lips move at all. So if you're listening, then make sure that you go and watch as well, because you can watch us on the Creative Motion Network, on Roku TV, on Vimeo. We also are on YouTube. So you definitely want to get the full visual, see the long, beautiful golden locks of love that fall right out of the cap when Dan lifts that off.
Wow.
The glory and the beauty behind the hat. Okay.
Don't get blinded.
Yeah, and if you go online and watch, you'll be able to see I got this Gilligan's Island thing happening now in the front of my head. So that's pretty good.
It's a big coconut.
And you were talking about seeing your friend at was it Kroger's or something, at Market?
Yes.
This is something I love about Facebook, is that you meet people, and this was kind of weird. A guy looked me up on Facebook, and I haven't seen him, talk to him anything since 3rd grade. That's the last time we had any connection. And I'm way past that age. So anyway, he said, "So Dan, what have you been up to?" I said, "Since 3rd grade?" Well, I got a paper route. After that, things get a little complicated. Yeah, it's kind of funny how that has brought people out of the woodwork,
Oh my gosh. That would take a few minutes to recap the last, at least 25.
Yeah. No, don't put a number out there. We don't need to know what that number is. Just, that's why I got the hat.
Paper route, pimples, and married.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there you go.
The rule of threes and alliteration, Michele, you know how much I love it. Paper out, pencil, or what? Paper out, pimples, and puberty. That's what he's been doing.
And puberty. There you go.
There it is. Well, Dan,
okay, I might have to steal that and use that. Is that okay with you?
Yes, absolutely. I love alliterations. And yes, I think when you say, what have I been up to? I don't know, paper route, pimples, and puberty. I
love that. That's good. Now it's a better joke. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Well, listen, Dan.
Look at you being your laugh support.
I know. We can't thank you enough for being on here. We are thanking you with, ending with puberty there. But guys, you've got to check out Dan McGowan. It's DanMcGowan.com, danmcgowan.com.
That's me. You can also check out, it's a website that I'm just starting, so it's kind of in the very beginnings. Michele's on there with a video. I got 3 videos, I think. And it's called Laughing Flock. So I don't know yet if it's just going to be a content site or a place where maybe Christian Clean Comics can get bookings. I don't know yet, but it just launched. But laughingflock.com if you want to check that out. And then, of course, danmcgowan.com, where you can see demos of me telling jokes. Yes. And you can also figure out how to bring me to your corporate event or your community event or church event or, cruise ship or whatever it is, and other events that start with the letter C, as Michele said. So
there it is. Well, y'all check him out, danmcgowan.com, and again, laughingflock.com. Dan, thank you for being here today. Michele's going to kick you to the back. We're going to recap and hang out for just a minute.
Thank you, Dan.
Sure. Thanks. Great to be here.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, Michele, you always have the best comedy friends. I love getting to meet your people. I love it.
Right? Dan's amazing. So I'm so glad that he had a chance to be with us today, and that, because we actually did a sound check yesterday or the day before just to make sure things worked out. And so I'm really glad that everything is, he's so funny. He's so funny.
So what you're
people
saying
have to hire him.
You left me out of the sound check, Michele?
I did. Well, you were dealing with suppositories, whatever your dad's dealing with. You were dealing with that stuff.
I was going to say you were being kind because you didn't want to, wear out this beautiful voice of mine any more than I have to. But that's okay, fine. How about we end with puberty and suppositories? So that's it, you guys, for this episode of the Laugh Support Podcast. I always end with Jesus and Junebug loves you. Michele, what do you have to say today?
I want to say thank you for listening. We love you guys, and God bless.